What was the breaking point that made you leave your crazy girlfriend? The first big incident of the year came during spring break. My friend, 22M, used to live in LA, so during spring break we decided to visit LA and stayed in an Airbnb with him and his girlfriend, 24F. Bear in mind that my girlfriend was the one who wanted to go to LA as she'd never been before, while my friend and his girlfriend had obviously been a few times since LA is quite expensive. Anyway, we ended up going to Disneyland one of the days at her request. Unfortunately, it rained that day. We all still wanted to have a good time, and honestly, I think for most people light rain isn't that big of a deal. But my girlfriend was incredibly moody for the first half of the day until I finally had to talk to her to get her to understand that her bad attitude over a little bit of rain that was coming and going made no sense. This honestly pissed me off because she was being rude, but I let it go once her mood improved after asking her what was wrong multiple times. Not just me, but everyone else too found it weird given she was the one who asked to go to Disneyland. Anyway, after Disneyland we ended up going to the Cheesecake Factory. Neither of us had particularly big appetites since we'd been eating junk food throughout the day, so we shared a plate and took home the leftovers. The next day, the girls planned to go out with some of my friend's colleagues while we just stayed home and played Call of Duty. It was coming up on the end of the trip, and the leftovers were still in the fridge. So I asked my friend if he thought it was a good idea to eat them since the girls were going out anyway and we were going for a final dinner that night. He said yeah, so I did while the girls were getting ready. They ended up being too late and didn't end up going out, so when my girlfriend checked the fridge and found the leftovers eaten, she got really mad. She didn't quite reach shouting level, but she was complaining a lot about "you don't care if I eat," and she unironically said "you would obviously let me starve," which is insane considering I pay for most of the food she eats. I didn't say much in response, just saying that if you were hungry I'd order more food and generally just explaining myself, but I really wasn't about to apologize because she was laying into me, calling me inconsiderate, etc., despite the fact that it was day-old leftovers of food we'd shared and she is honestly my biggest expense. The girls ended up going out after all, and my friend remarked how crazy her reaction was, but I just changed the subject and we played video games until we got ready to leave for dinner. At dinner I was still annoyed with her, and afterward she told me she wasn't sure about our future plans together and broke up with me over that leftover food incident. That was a big deal to me because I'm quite a planner, down to even having written down where I was going to propose to her, etc. We ended up getting back together on the flight back to New York, but she revealed to me that she had tried some substances earlier this year when she went out with my female friends and not told me because she knew how much I was against it. At first, she had said that my friends told her not to tell me, but when I started getting upset at them she admitted it wasn't them. I wasn't sure if it was backtracking from a lie or she was taking responsibility to not affect my relationship with my friends. I assumed it was the second because that's the one I respected more. But from then on I really didn't trust her anymore. I finished my exams and we were still together despite a few scares. I had a summer internship coming up in New York, where she's from, and we decided that she would stay with me because her family situation isn't great and I had the space, so I ended up getting accommodation according to her preferences, which was more expensive, but oh well, anything for your girl, right? The first weekend there she ended up taking me to her church but was inexplicably cold the whole way there. I really don't do well with bad attitudes, and I shouldn't have done this, but after asking her multiple times what was wrong I decided to just walk her to church and go home because I didn't want to be in an unfamiliar place where she knew a lot of people but refused to talk to me. She ended up coming home and saying she was going to move out and started packing her stuff. I was annoyed that I had spent all this extra money for her just for her to act like this, so I told her if she takes her stuff we're done. I know this might seem a bit strict, but I realize now that I actually resented her quite a bit for the previous situations and numerous other ones. She moved all her stuff out then ended up coming back and apologizing, so she moved back in and we got back together. So stupid. Her birthday came halfway through the internship, and since the internship paid so well I decided to splurge and took her to Europe. I have an aunt in London so we stayed there for a night then went to Paris to visit. She ended up getting her hair done in London because I'll admit it was quite last minute since I wasn't sure if we'd still be together. She didn't like her new hairdo, so she ended up crying for a whole hour, which is half of the train ride from London to Paris. I was trying to be supportive, I even called my mom to talk to her, which probably pissed her off even more. Honestly, the hair wasn't bad by her own admission, it was just expensive and given what she paid it should have been done right according to her. I tried to give her a pep talk, but she cut me off saying I don't understand, I'm not empathetic, and she shouldn't come to me with emotional problems because I never say/do the right thing. This was after her coming to me with problems and me trying, as gently as possible, to let her know when she was in the wrong rather than just blindly agreeing with her. Bear in mind, all I'd done was tell her she looked great and hug her, but she told me that me telling her she looked great also made her mad, and she compared me to her friends who were her family, implying I'm not, and said she won't come to me with these problems anymore. After a while I gave up and left her to her crying and listened to music by myself. When we got to Paris I was obviously being cold, and she said fine, she'll just go to the Eiffel Tower by herself on a scooter. I asked her what the hell and we had a back and forth about how after everything, me taking her on a trip etc. didn't say paying because she's sensitive to that, she was acting really ungrateful. After some arguing she said fine let's go, but I was honestly sick of her attitude and told her to just go herself, so she did. The next morning was her birthday and I'll admit I should have changed my attitude but I didn't, I was still annoyed and wasn't satisfied by her half-hearted apology. We went out and eventually she had enough of my attitude and told me I was ruining her birthday. I apologized but she turned cold and told me I should just leave if I didn't want to be there, and honestly I degraded myself with her continuously telling me to F off, but I didn't want to leave her alone in a foreign city. I snapped and just left her after a while, then went back to find her and we had an okay day after that. I felt really guilty afterwards, so I ended up getting her an expensive solid gold anklet, which she had always wanted, and taking her out to an expensive dinner at the end of the internship before I went back home to Texas. When I was back home, a female friend who I'd met during my internship came to visit, didn't stay over, just came for like a 2-hour lunch with my family, and despite the fact I'd told her about the visit, my girlfriend went crazy and started accusing me of gaslighting her. I think she felt jealous because this girl was from the same Nigerian culture as me. She also made me cancel plans with some other female friends who were supposed to come to Texas at the same time as her because she had a concert she wanted to go to, despite the fact I'd already confirmed plans with them, which really pissed me off. The reason it was so annoying apart from the obvious is that I grew up in New York and we moved to Texas when I went to college, also in New York, so I have no friends here and haven't seen anyone since I graduated. I promise I have a lot of male friends too, but my NY male friends are broke as most went to grad school and the rest made bad choices when they were younger. Honestly, I was gonna forgive all of this, but recently my friend committed unalive while visiting me. Nobody had spoken to my now dead friend for months, including his girlfriend, because he said he needed space. Since my friend wasn't close with his dad, when he died and his dad was alone with him in the house, I told her it was a shame because if he'd seen his mom's face maybe he wouldn't have done it. She went on a tirade about how crappy parents ruin everything and the dad should feel bad for not checking on his son. The police came to his door because of the unalive note he sent to his girlfriend, but it was only a few hours after he had died. My friends and I were typical guys, we don't know each other's personal stuff, but I knew my friend wasn't cool with his dad. She had nowhere near enough information to conclude he was a bad father, and I can't describe how I felt about that. I didn't say anything, but I could clearly tell she was making it about herself and her absent father. The next day she said it's a shame she wasn't his real girlfriend because it might not have happened. I knew the girl, but even I didn't know their exact relationship status. I asked how she knew and she said something like she hadn't talked to him in months, by his request, so obviously they weren't a real couple. If it was you and me there's no way I wouldn't talk to you for months, etc., obviously making it about herself. This time I did push back, but we didn't argue long, she just stood her ground, while losing more of my respect. She knows I don't mess with that kind of stuff since I used to tell her off for talking about her friends behind their backs, but she told me this is how girls are, and my ex-girlfriend and some female friends were the same, so I let it go and was just quiet when she did it. I understand this may have just been her way of trying to relate, but she also claims that guys who don't know what their girlfriends want, gifts like jewelry for example, are bad boyfriends/husbands. Whenever I ask her to stop expecting me to be a mind reader and communicate, so why doesn't she know me well enough to know that would not make me feel better? Anyway, while that situation is probably what truly broke my affection for her, I think her poor decision making is what made me realize that she, as a concept, is just impractical. She started art classes a month ago and has been applying for jobs for over a year, since graduating, and my family offered her to stay with us instead of with her not so great family where she won't necessarily have the same opportunities. Also, it's not safe for her there for very serious but private personal reasons. She told me that she's paid for her art class so doesn't want to waste the money and that I don't understand because I'm a spoiled rich kid, paraphrasing. My mom overheard our argument and what she said ended our relationship for good. She told me that insisting her reasons aren't good enough given the circumstances is controlling, and that my role is to advise and support. While I completely agree, I think that interaction just made me realize that her decisions/actions are not my responsibility. She can be wrong and it isn't up to me to instruct her to be better, just to communicate and accept whatever she does. I think it just made me accept that everything she's done was her own choice, it wasn't some mistake for me to correct. That mindset made it easy for me to let her mistakes go because I believed it was my job to correct them. Ironically, she didn't want us to break up given we'd been together for a few years, but I slowly made her understand why we had to part ways until she accepted it. So now I've told her I need time to focus on myself and my career, find a job, etc., but we're definitely not getting back together. Once I've gotten myself together, we're breaking up for good.